Hey, what's up everyone and welcome to today's video. This episode will get you through the issues of the Uncanny X-Men published by Marvel Comics in 1984. Issue 180. For the first time in decades, Charles Xavier can walk again. He's exploring the newly found limits of his body in the Danger Room, which has been programmed to resemble a basketball court. While he's moving around on the court, he's fantasizing about being in a pro basketball game, about to make the winning score at the buzzer. But he ends up missing the bucket. So much for dreams of glory, he tells himself, realizing that the nice thing about having fantasies is that you can always give yourself another chance. And then, suddenly, an extreme pain blindsides Xavier. The pain is so intense that it's making him grab his own skull, as he stumbles against the wall and then drops to his knees on the ground. The sudden attack doesn't last long though. It fades quite quickly, and this isn't the first psychic attack either, but out of all the recent attacks he has endured, this one was by far the worst. As he's slowly pulling himself together again, he thinks about how he's supposed to be the strongest telepath known to mankind, but that his powers are nothing compared to this. He just cannot protect himself from it, nor has he been able to locate its source. He can tell though that it's some form of scanning wave, but he has no idea what or who it's looking for. It feels alien, not only alien to this planet, but alien to the entire universe. As he's lost in thoughts, he gets approached by someone. Storm has joined him inside the Danger Room because she could clearly hear him cry from the outside, and she asks him if he's doing alright. He tells her he will live, but will probably be aching tomorrow. Storm tells him she understands how he must feel, to which Xavier asks her if she really does. She reminds Xavier while he's getting up that he's only recently regained the use of his legs, and that if he keeps pushing himself too hard, he could do himself serious injury. Xavier knows that she's right, and he tells her that he will behave in the future. He just got carried away. Storm then asks him if he used to be an athlete, and Xavier tells her that he used to be back when he was in college. He loved sports, but he had to give it up. As his mutant power started manifesting, he could hear the opposing team's thoughts. He could instantly counter their every move, as soon as they had thought up their plans. Apart from it being a cruel and unfair advantage over them, it took all the joy out of the game for him. It would have been dishonorable for him to continue playing under those circumstances. Back then, he hated his mutant gift. He would have given anything to be able to get rid of it. Storm then thinks back to when she first manifested her powers. She thought that it was wonderful, but she had no conception of the responsibilities having such powers entailed. Some things she would soon learn, and she wished the cost had not been so dear. Xavier then grabs Storm by the arm and asks her if she is alright. She says that according to Kitty, she is not alright. Kitty thinks that Storm has become a monster. When Xavier tells her that she certainly has changed, Storm asks him if it has been changed for the better or for worse. Before Xavier answers her, he comes to the realization that he had never looked at Storm as a woman. That he had always thought that she was beyond such things, but yet, looking at her now, he suddenly finds himself all too aware of how female and attractive she is. He then answers her, telling her that even though she once considered herself a goddess and acted as such, there is no shame in simply being human. Storm then expresses that she wonders if she hadn't been better off living the lie of being a goddess. She continues by telling Xavier that her change is not merely a cosmetic one. The difference in her appearance is a reflection of something deep within her, and she confides in Xavier, telling him that at times, this transformation of hers frightens her as much as it does Kitty. She tells him that she finds herself casting aside the precepts and beliefs which gave her life meaning, and she hardly misses them once they are gone. She nearly killed Callisto during their duel for the Morlock leadership, and she had almost done so during their second encounter as well, had she been given the chance, where she once held all life sacred. She then tells Xavier that sometimes she thinks, or she fears, that she must be insane. Xavier then reaches for her head and tells her that his psi probe reveals no mental illnesses. He tells her, however, that this was only a surface scan. For gross physiological anomalies, to learn the nature and the extent of any purely emotional disorder, he would have to probe deeper. and even then, there is a limit for what he can or should do. He tells her it's tempting to meddle with people's minds, but he has learned a harsh lesson. That even for all his care and his fine intentions, the consequences can be devastating. And occasionally tragic. He then says that he will try and help Aurora as best as he can. She tells him that for now, she prefers to find her own path, and she thinks to herself that she's not sure if what she wants is to become the Windrider she once was, or rather, to accept what she is today. Somewhere else, Kitty Pryde and Doc Ramsey are spending some time together at an arcade. They are competing for the highest score between the two of them, and suddenly, mid-game, the system overloads and crashes. They then get approached by the owner, who tells them to leave. Doc asks the owner what they did, and he tells Doc to not talk back to him, or he will charge his parents for breaking the game. As Kitty gets pushed towards the exit, she tells the guy that there's no reason to get mad, and that she can fix the problem, and probably even make the game better than what it was. The owner then tells him that he's tired of the two of them hogging the consoles for hours on only just one quarter. It's ruining his business, he says. He tells him he wants them out of there and doesn't want them coming back. Ever. As Kitty calls the owner a creep, she and Doc walk off, and she says that they have now actually been banned in every arcade hall in the whole Westchester County. Doc mockingly dramatizes the situation, and Kitty asks him to lower his voice, because people are starting to look at them. He then suggests to drown their sorrows in lunch instead, and Kitty says that that's a great idea, as she calls him a nut, and Doc tells her it takes one to know one. As they are sitting down, Doc asks Kitty if she's doing alright. He says that lately it seems that she's feeling down a lot, and he's wondering if it has anything to do with him. Kitty tells him that that is not the case at all. She asks him what gave him that idea and tells him that she actually likes him a lot. He tells her that the feeling is mutual and asks her why she's so grumpy then. Kitty opens up and tells him it's because of Aurora. She tells him that when she first met Aurora, she thought she was the most beautiful person she had ever seen, both inside and out. But her recent changes in hairstyle, clothing and attitude made the serenity that surrounded Aurora disappear. Doc then asks Kitty if Aurora's feelings for Kitty have changed, and Kitty responds by saying that she doesn't know, and in a way she doesn't really care, because her feelings for Aurora have changed. Kitty then continues by saying that she had always figured that if you love someone, it would be forever. But she has recently found out that did not apply to her parents, and now she's not so sure about her and Aurora either. She's confused on how she could love someone that actually scares her. She then continues by telling Doc that Aurora knew what she meant to Kitty, how important she was to her. Kitty doesn't understand why she had to become such a different person, and she tells Doc that she feels it isn't right and it isn't fair. She then apologizes to Doc, saying that she shouldn't be dumping this on him, but it's just that Aurora was so special to her, like a mom and a best friend both at the same time. And now, it feels like she has become a stranger to her. Kitty fears that she has lost Aurora forever. Doc then tells Kitty that he is a friend too, and he grabs and holds Kitty's wrist, saying he will be there for her when she needs him to be. Kitty then grabs Doc's wrist as well and asks him if he means that. Doc then tells Kitty some good news. He had already told her about the invitation he got from the Massachusetts Academy, but now he has an appointment next week, and he was hoping that she would come along with him to show him around, since she was a student there. Kitty interrupts him and says that she was only there for a week, and hated it. When Doc asks her why that was, Kitty blames it on the lack of chemistry, saying that she was not cut out to be a preppy. But what she doesn't tell Doc is that she, of course, is an X-Men, and that the school is being run by the Hellfire Club, one of their nastiest enemies, a bunch of evil mutants who are out to conquer the world. Kitty knows that she cannot let Doc go up there alone, because of what might happen to him when he's over there. But she also knows that if she were to go up there with him, probably a whole lot worse is going to happen to her. She knows that she has to do something, but is lost as to what it is that she should do. Back over at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Pyotr Rasputin is pushing his body to the limits. And beyond. He is still recovering from the wounds he got during the team's most recent battle with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Instead of resting his body, he's chopping trees in the woods surrounding the school. He should definitely not be doing this, but he couldn't care any less. As another tree falls to the ground and Pyotr is leaning on the axe he's using, he gets complimented, sarcastically, by none other than the man known as Wolverine. Pyotr is surprised by Wolverine's presence as he figured he was alone here in the woods. Wolverine keeps on commenting on how seeing Pyotr leveling the tree, using only one arm at that, was a sight to behold. He says that it was pretty impressive. Pyotr, getting slightly annoyed with Wolverine's remarks, asks him if he doesn't have somewhere else he'd rather be right now. Wolverine tells him nope, and Pyotr says that that's a pity. As Wolverine is smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer, he tells Pyotr that he has no business tearing himself up over Kitty. Pyotr, who in the meantime used his mutant ability and armored up as Colossus, tells Wolverine that this is none of his concern. Wolverine, however, sees it differently. He tells Colossus that they are both his friends and that surely makes it his concern alright. Colossus then tells Wolverine that where he comes from, in Russia, Kitty and him could be married right now, and could be raising a family. Wolverine tells him that if that's what he wants, it wouldn't hurt to wait either. Colossus tells Wolverine that he was convinced that that was indeed what he wanted, and that he could indeed wait for that moment. It had, however, never entered his mind that Kitty might have felt differently about this. As Colossus then rips the stump of the tree from the ground by its roots, using his one good arm, Wolverine reminds Colossus that Kitty gave herself to the Morlocks to save his life. He tells Colossus that that fact should give him a pretty good idea of where she stands on the matter. Colossus says that he was just as certain. As he's holding the stump of the tree, Wolverine asks him if he's scared. Colossus then tells Wolverine that he believes that Douglas Ramsey is everything which he is not, and what he can never be. When he watches Kitty interact with him, it brings home some brutal truths. He sees himself little more than an ignorant peasant, coming from a society and culture which is as alien to Kitty as the aliens that they have encountered in space. He then tells Wolverine that Kitty to him was a dream, and that perhaps it's time to wake up now and face reality. Wolverine just gives him an intense look, and tells him that if he truly believes that, about both her and himself, he has already lost, and has lost more than he knows. Over at the Botanical Gardens in the Bronx, New York, time seems to have been standing still. Outside, it's cold and snowing. Winter has come over New York with a vengeance. But inside the building, the trees are not as barren as they are on the outside. Inside, flowers are in bloom, covering the floor with a carpet of truly living colors, and the air is filled with a glorious scent. Aurora comes here often, visiting the flowers which were once housed in the attic at Xavier's mansion. In many ways, these gardens remind her of her old home in Africa, where she lived in perfect harmony with nature itself. Beautiful and peaceful nature. Not that long ago, Aurora was fearful of having lost her bond with the force of nature. But when she made her first trip down to these gardens, she realized just how much aware of life she still was. As she drifts off in thought, she thinks how it no longer matters now. A part of her yearns for the peace and innocence of her youth, and she tries to come up with the reason of why it was so easy for her to leave it all behind, if all she had back then was so right. She then creates a small cloud and a rainstorm with her powers, to water some of the plants which seem to have been a little dried out. As she's doing this, she hears someone shout and scream out. Someone close by is being hurt. She sees 4 thugs who have assaulted an old man and a lady and are now emptying the woman's purse, while she tries to protect her man who is lying on the floor unconscious. Aurora tells these men to leave the couple alone and be on their way, or if they don't, they will have to answer to her. The thugs then mock her, thinking that Aurora is no threat to them. One of them starts to attack her, as he charges her with his dagger. But she easily deals with him. She moves out of the way of his attack and uses his momentum to launch him through one of the windowed walls of the garden. Surprised as they are at Aurora's effectiveness in dealing with one of their fellow gang members, they all take out their daggers and plan on exacting revenge on her. Aurora tells them that it will take men a whole lot better than them to even get close to her as she knocks them to the ground. As she's being attacked by the 4th guy, she pivots herself just like Wolverine had taught her, and manages to deal with him as well, even though he tried to blindside her. With these men now being dealt with, she summons a lightning storm to drive the message home. The skies turn dark over the greenhouse and lightning flashes bright, and thunderclaps making the earth shake. With this show of brute and elemental powers, she tells these guys to change their ways, and if they decide to not do so, word will come her way and she will be very angry. She then gets on her knees and talks to the couple, makes sure they are alright and tells them they should most likely not see these thugs anymore. Even though the lady thanks Aurora, she can tell by the look in her and her husband's eyes that they are frightened of her. More frightened than they were of the thugs she just saved them from. Aurora should probably be used to that by now, but she can't help but feel hurt by this realization. And then, while in mid-thought, she suddenly gets hailed by Xavier, telling her to return home at once because something urgent has come up. Later that night at the school, a conversation is taking place. Kitty has decided to tell the professor and her teammates that Doug is at risk. She tells them that he's a good friend of hers and doesn't want him falling in the clutches of the Hellfire Club. She also tells them about the interview Doug has at the Massachusetts Academy and how he invited her to come along because she has been there. She is flattered with him trusting her judgment, and she tells her teammates that she would like to go along with him. She says she believes the risk to be minimal at best, with the Hellfire Club being in disarray. The only effective membership is reduced to Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost, the latter of whom is still in a coma. Kitty would like the professor to monitor her telepathically, so he will know whenever she runs into trouble. And, if that happens to be the case, the rest of the X-Men members can act accordingly. She expects even Sebastian Shaw to not be crazy enough to tackle the entire team single-handedly. She concludes by saying that if she'll behave, she will most likely not give the Hellfire Club any reason to take action, and she should be okay. Xavier then expresses curiosity why the Academy would be so interested in Douglas Ramsey, and what he says next shocks Kitty. Xavier says he wonders if the Hellfire Club could possibly know that Doug is a mutant as well. He then continues by informing everyone present that Doug's mutant gift is being able to decipher languages. Both human languages as well as computer language. It is not a flashy mutant power like most of them possess, but a mutant gift nonetheless. He then asks Storm about her opinion on the matter. She says that she does not like the idea of Kitty walking into enemy camp all by herself one bit. But she says that she believes Kitty's plan covers every contingency, so she approves with reservations, and so does Xavier. After the meeting is over, Kitty is walking in the hallways of the school, going over the shocking news she just heard about Doug being a mutant. She wishes she could talk to him about it, but the professor says it's safer in the long run if he doesn't know. With his powers being less inconspicuous, they are more suited for normal life among the rest of the outside society. Unlike the powers of most of the X-Men. Her mind then wanders off, thinking about the professor being able to walk again, and going along with the team on missions. She wonders who will take the lead in the field. Will it be him or Storm? And how will Storm take it if he takes up the leadership role? She then notices a strong breeze and figures someone must have left a window open or something. But then, the breeze turns into a wind and she's swept off her feet. She can't stop herself getting carried along, and all of a sudden she's flying through the air. Outside, she immediately shouts out to Storm to cut it out. But Storm tells her it's long overdue they had a talk. A talk removed from prying eyes, ears and minds. And all of a sudden, both women find themselves miles up in the sky. Kitty tells Storm that she could have just asked her to have a talk with her, and that there's no need to show off like this. She then tells Storm that she scared her half to death. Storm then asks her if the Storm Kitty prefers would not have done this, and Kitty confirms this. Storm then asks her if she then, for Kitty's own peace of mind, should force herself to be someone or something that she is not. Kitty tells her that that would be a whole lot better than what she is now. She then asks Storm why she changed, and says that she doesn't understand that decision, and Storm tells her that neither does she herself. Storm then continues by saying that the longer she stayed in X-Men, the more she came into conflict with what she always thought was her fundamental self. A conflict forcing herself to ask the question, is she a goddess or an X-Men? And if the answer was to be that she's an X-Men, could she then find a place where she could maintain the precepts that defined the goddess's life? Initially, she had thought yes. But then, she became team leader, and discovered within herself, just like Cyclops had before, the terrible capacity to make hardline decisions. A decision to, if necessary for the greater good, sacrifice the lives of those she loves. She found out that if the need arises, she could be as ruthless as Wolverine. Kitty then remarks that Storm sounds like she takes pride in that, but Storm tells her that she is merely stating a fact. She continues by saying that the doubts she had and the needs which sprang from those doubts have existed a long time, but she simply lacked the courage to give those doubts and needs full voice. Until that night in Tokyo, when Wolverine's friend Yukio and fate itself pushed her over the edge. Kitty asks her if it was a push into the air or a push into the abyss, and Storm answers by saying, "Who knows?" She says that life involves growth, and growth means continual change. And in life, you might not like those changes, but you cannot keep running away from them. Eventually, one will have to face them. Kitty shouts out no. She says that some things should not change at all. Some things should remain a constant. She tells Storm that it was bad enough for her to hear that her parents couldn't even keep the promises they had made one another, and that she thought that she could at least count on Storm. Storm asks her by what right. She then grabs Kitty by her arms and says that she is her friend, and that she prays that she will always remain so. But that is all. Storm is not, and must not be, her mother. There was a time that Storm believed she could fulfill that role, to fill in a void in both their lives. But that was simply a mistake. Kitty then asks if she doesn't love her, and Storm replies that she does, with all her heart. But at the same time, she asks Kitty if she herself doesn't have other demands on her heart, on her love. She takes freedoms for herself, but she denies Storm hers, at the same time. She tells Kitty that they both have their own lives to live, their own roads to walk, and their own personal destinies. Friends and lovers may walk by their sides, but ultimately the journey itself is made alone. She then tells Kitty that she's finding out things about herself which she doesn't like, but she must keep learning, striving to find her true self, to find her place in the grand scheme of things. She must know who she is. She has to live her life as she sees fit. She then concludes by telling Kitty that if she truly loves her, she must let her do so. Kitty then tells Storm that she is scared. Scared for if this will happen to her as well. Scared that if she falls in love, will that only be for a while, or worse, will that person stop loving her? They then finally hug, and cannot bear seeing them destroying themselves. Storm then says that maybe she's infected with some kind of madness, as for the first time in all of her adult life, she can laugh and cry at the same time. She can actually feel emotions to the fullest extent, without having to deny it and cast it out for what she thought was her own good. She asks Kitty to bear with her, to stand by her. She tells her that she needs the strength of a true friend, even if, in the days to come, that strength may be the ability and willingness to let her go. She asks Kitty if she could do that for her, and Kitty mumbles that she will try. Later, during the following week, the X-Men are dropping Kitty off at the airport. Kitty panics and thinks she has forgotten to pack something, but Nightcrawler calms her down by saying that she's not traveling to the moon, and that Massachusetts is only a couple of miles away, part of the civilized world. If need be, they can always send her a special package, for certain needs. It is time to get on board, and Kitty tells Pyotr that she already misses him, asking him for a kiss for luck. Pyotr tells her to have a safe trip and to take care. When Kitty walks off, she thinks about why Pyotr is acting so strangely, and if it is because of something she has done. It seems as if he's uncomfortable when she's around, and she wonders if he no longer cares for her anymore. Doug is already waiting for her, and tells her to not look so sad, because they will only be gone for a week. When the plane takes off, Doug asks if she's alright, and if she's crying or not. Kitty tells Doug to not be stupid, and that it's just something in her eye. Doug then tells her how excited he is. The Academy sent a private plane to fly them up to Massachusetts, and Kitty tells him that she's glad he's happy. He says he will feel like a real louse if it turns out that he doesn't like the Academy after all, and Kitty tells him to cross that bridge when he gets there. But in the meantime, she herself is nervous as hell, because she's about to enter enemy territory, wondering when she will get ambushed. She figures she should probably take her own advice, because at this rate, she'll end up as a nervous wreck long before the Hellfire Club will be able to do anything to her. She tries to convince herself that worrying about things this much is stupid. As been said before, they all agreed that every contingency was covered in her plan. Even Xavier himself said so. But then, they hear a voice. A voice welcoming the two of them aboard the plane on behalf of the Massachusetts Academy. And this voice is very familiar to Kitty. She can't believe what she hears, as the person stepping through the curtain tells Kitty that it's nice to see her again, and that she had been looking forward to their reunion. It is actually Emma Frost, the White Queen of the Inner Circle of the Hellfire Club, the headmistress of the Massachusetts Academy, apparently woken up from the coma she had been in for months. The White Queen tells them that she is glad Kitty decided to accompany Douglas, and that she has taken the utmost care to ensure that their stay with her will be quite unforgettable. Kitty is utterly shocked by this, and all she can do is stare at the White Queen and try and reach Professor Xavier by shouting to him for help in her mind. Professor Xavier himself, in the meantime, is currently in a car with the rest of the X-Men. They left the airport in a rush, and Storm asks him why they was and why they went to Central Park. Xavier tells her that is something he hopes to find out right now. He tells everyone that in the past several weeks, he has had encounters in a series of extremely powerful psychic scanning waves. He tells them he has no idea who had been responsible for these psychic attacks and doesn't know what he's looking for. All he knows is that it's alien in origin and that tonight he has suddenly been able to pinpoint its source. And it seems to be right here in Central Park. They get out of the car and enter the park, and are amazed at what they find there. There is some kind of titanic construct, and Colossus asks how it's even possible for something so huge to just appear in the middle of New York without being noticed. Wolverine asks what's next, as they get closer to the construct. And somehow, without knowing why and without being able to resist, and even before Kitty's outcry for help can even reach Xavier, the X-Men find themselves drawn towards the gate of the construct. And once they enter it, in a flash, the X-Men vanish, teleported away from Earth, and possibly even away from the universe itself. And perhaps, maybe even, to never return. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. You can help growing this channel by liking, subscribing and sharing. This tells YouTube that the videos I'm making should be recommended to others and would be very much appreciated. See you next episode.